The conference room buzzed with voices, a background hum of conversation as I glanced down at my phone, which lit up with an incoming call from Tyler. Expecting a routine check-in, maybe a casual, "How's the trip going?" or "When are you coming back?" I stepped into the hallway. But instead of the usual, his voice came through sharp and self-satisfied. Without a hint of hesitation, he said, "I'm divorcing you." His words carried a disturbing sense of triumph. "And I've already sold the apartment. So, you'll have to figure out your living situation. Enjoy that." For a heartbeat, I was frozen, unable to process the cruelty of it. The sheer gall, the complete lack of empathy, it would have been comical if it hadn't been so gutting. My grip tightened around the phone, trying to steady myself as his words echoed in my head. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, keeping my voice as calm as I could. "Yeah," he replied with a dry chuckle. "Nicole and I need the money to start our life. That place was too small for her anyway." Nicole. Even though I'd suspected there was someone else, his mysterious late nights, abrupt work trips, and growing emotional distance, hearing her name spoken so casually stung more than I'd imagined. It was as if he had rewritten our story and cast me as the outsider. "Sounds good," I said, my tone even. I refused to give him the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. "My name is Amelia." Up until that moment, I had believed I was married to a man who valued our life together. Tyler and I had spent 6 years as a couple. It wasn't always smooth, but I thought our bond was real. The apartment we purchased, a modest 2-bedroom nestled in the city, wasn't just a roof over our heads. It was a testament to our shared journey and the future we were building, or so I thought. Reflecting now, I see the warning signs were always there. The way Tyler would brush off financial discussions with dismissive remarks or distract me with his usual charm. I assumed his confidence stemmed from competence. In truth, it came from knowing he could deceive me without consequence. The rest of my day passed in a daze. I went through the motions, meetings, handshakes, polite nods, while internally grappling with the betrayal. Tyler believed he had outmaneuvered me, that he could simply erase me from our shared life and carry on with someone else. But what he didn't realize was that I'd quietly changed the deed months ago. After a refinancing deal earlier in the year, I had transferred the apartment into my name alone. Tyler had signed off on it without bothering to read the fine print, lured by the promise of a better interest rate. His carelessness would now cost him dearly. That evening, back in my hotel room, the shock had dissolved into something firmer, determination. I wasn't going to fall apart. If Tyler wanted a war, then he would get one, but I had no intention of losing. My first call was to Chloe, my attorney and a close friend. I laid out everything, each detail spilling from me with a calm I barely felt. "He sold the apartment," she repeated, clearly stunned. "Does he even realize that he can't legally do that without your permission?" "Apparently not," I replied, a flicker of amusement in my voice. "He's already planning his future with Nicole, money and all." Chloe let out a dry laugh. "Well, that's going to be a problem for him. The sale won't hold up. You have proof of sole ownership. If he accepted any money from a buyer, that's fraud." The word hit me with satisfying force, fraud. "So, what do we do next?" I asked. "First, we alert the buyer that the transaction isn't valid," Chloe explained. "Then we send Tyler a formal letter detailing the legal consequences of what he's done. If he tries anything else, we'll take him to court." After I ended the call, a strange calm washed over me. Tyler had thought he'd cornered me, thought I'd be left scrambling. But he'd underestimated me. In his rush to start over, he'd left himself exposed. For the rest of my business trip, I pushed the betrayal to the back of my mind, focusing on work and gathering my strength. The hurt lingered, of course, but I had a newfound sense of direction. Reclaiming my life and watching Tyler's smug confidence crumble became my driving force. When I boarded the flight back, I felt ready. Ready to confront him, to expose the lies, and to take the first steps toward a future that didn't involve Tyler. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about regaining my power. The hours on the plane gave me plenty of time to reflect. Tyler's audacity was truly staggering. He hadn't even tried to mask his betrayal, as though I was just a temporary roadblock to be pushed aside. But instead of letting that fury consume me, I redirected it. I had a plan. Tyler thought I was helpless, but in truth, I'd been laying the groundwork for months without realizing it. As soon as the wheels touched down, I grabbed my suitcase and called Chloe. "I'm back," I said, lifting my luggage off the carousel. "What's our next step?" "We've already informed the buyer," she said, her voice clipped and professional. They were stunned, definitely didn't expect it, and they're far from pleased with Tyler. But they're willing to cooperate, which works in our favor. "And what about Tyler?" I asked. "I sent him the formal notice this morning," she replied. "It clearly states the illegality of the attempted sale, confirms that you are the sole legal owner of the apartment, and explains the potential legal repercussions for fraud." He hasn't replied yet, but if I had to guess, he's absolutely livid. That was fine by me. Let him stew in it. When I got back to the apartment, an eerie silence greeted me. Tyler's belongings were all in their usual places, jackets hanging on the back of the chair, shoes tossed by the entrance like always, but something felt off. The energy had shifted. I took a deep breath, set down my suitcase, and mentally prepared myself. The confrontation was inevitable. Sure enough, later that evening, Tyler burst through the door, fuming. His face was flushed with fury, and he was gripping his phone tightly. "What is this supposed to be?" he yelled, waving the letter Chloe had sent him. "You're saying I'm not allowed to sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Tyler," I said, staying composed and folding my arms. "It's not yours. The deed has been solely in my name for several months now. You can't legally sell something that doesn't belong to you." He stopped in his tracks, eyes flickering between disbelief and outrage. "What are you even saying?" I reached for the file I had prepared earlier and held up the deed for him. "After we refinanced, I had it transferred into my name. You signed all the documents. Or maybe you didn't bother reading them, like you usually don't." He stared at the document, and for a moment, he was silent. Then his features hardened into a mocking sneer. "Oh, you think you've outsmarted me? This isn't over. I already made the deal, and when it falls apart, it'll be on you. You'll look ridiculous." I didn't flinch. "The sale has already been canceled, Tyler. The buyer is fully aware of the situation and is ready to press charges unless the money is returned." I took a small step closer, my voice low and steady. "And just so we're clear, if you've touched a single penny from that deposit, you're going to face even more trouble." For the first time, his bravado cracked. "You don't know what you're saying," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "You've spent years treating me like I'm too naive to notice what's going on. But guess what? I've been paying attention, and now it's time you face the consequences." He began pacing, frustration bubbling to the surface. "This is insane. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You can't just kick me out like this." I arched an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. The apartment legally belongs to me. You can stay here temporarily, only because I'm giving you the courtesy to figure things out. But don't mistake that for weakness. I'm not going anywhere." In the days that followed, Tyler's rage turned into panic. My phone was filled with voicemail after voicemail, his messages swinging between desperate pleas and veiled threats. At the same time, Chloe was diligently working in the background to secure our case. The buyer officially withdrew their offer, furious about the wasted time and lost funds. Chloe also began drafting the initial documents for the divorce. "You're in a strong position, Amelia," she reassured me during one of our meetings. "Tyler doesn't have any leverage left. With the failed sale and potential fraud charges, he'll have no choice but to cooperate if he wants to avoid legal disaster." Her confidence lifted a weight off my shoulders. But it also made me reflect on how much control Tyler had exercised over my life for so long. I had tolerated his dismissiveness, let his arrogance slide, and told myself it wasn't worth the fight. But now I could see the truth. I had given up far too much, and I was done doing that. One evening, my best friend Laura came by to help me reorganize the apartment. We gathered Tyler's things and stacked them neatly in the living room. "How's he handling all this?" she asked, holding up one of his overly flashy ties with an amused grin. Not well, I replied with a chuckle. He still believes he can charm his way out of it, but I'm standing firm. Good, she said, tossing the tie into the box. He doesn't deserve any more space in your home or in your life. I nodded, deeply thankful for her support. For years, I'd carried the emotional and financial weight of the marriage while Tyler basked in the credit. Now, I wasn't facing it alone anymore. I had allies, and that changed everything. The final piece of the puzzle slid into place the day Tyler showed up at the apartment with Nicole. I was seated at the dining table, reviewing documents, when they strolled in like they owned the place. Nicole's eyes scanned the room, a self-satisfied smile playing on her lips as she clung to Tyler's arm. So, this is our new place, she said, her tone dripping with arrogance. I stood up, my heart racing, but my resolve rock solid. No, I said without hesitation. This was Tyler's place. As for you, Nicole, you won't be staying here at all. Her smile wavered as she glanced over at Tyler, whose face mirrored the same shock. What is this supposed to be? He demanded. I motioned around the apartment and replied firmly, this is my place. Not yours, not hers, and definitely not some kind of makeshift hotel for you to crash in after betraying me. Nicole's expression turned cold, but she stayed silent. Tyler, however, looked like he was on the verge of yelling. You can't do this, he shouted, anger rising in his voice. You're being totally irrational. I met his glare without flinching. No, Tyler. What's irrational is you thinking you could sell my apartment, keep the cash, and expect me to just go along with it. You're lucky I haven't reported you yet. Tyler remained rooted in the doorway, his face turning a deep red from frustration. Meanwhile, Nicole folded her arms, clearly uncomfortable. You're being completely ridiculous, Amelia, he said, now sounding desperate. You can't just throw me out of my own place. I stepped toward him, speaking calmly but with firm conviction. This isn't your place anymore, Tyler. The property's been in my name for several months. You signed over the deed without even bothering to read it, like always. So no, you don't live here anymore. Nicole glanced at him, her grip tightening on her purse strap. Wait a minute. What is she even talking about? She snapped. You told me this was yours, that you had already sold it. Tyler winced and tried to wave her off. It's complicated, okay? I'll sort it out. It's not complicated at all, I interjected, stepping closer. You attempted to sell an apartment that legally isn't yours. That deal is null and void. As of now, you have absolutely no claim. Nicole's confident demeanor cracked. You mean, the money you told me you had? She asked, her voice climbing in pitch. Oh no. Did you lie about that too? Tyler lifted his hands quickly. Nicole, just let me explain. No, I interrupted. Let me make things clear. Tyler tried to sell this apartment behind my back, thinking he could vanish with the money and leave me stranded. What he didn't know was that I had already moved the deed into my name. Not only did his plan fail, but he also committed fraud by pretending he had the right to sell it. Nicole's mouth opened and closed, stunned, like a fish struggling to breathe. Fraud, she echoed, taking a step away. Are you actually serious? Yes, I confirmed, folding my arms. Fraud. And if he doesn't pack up his things and leave by tonight, I'm ready to take legal action. Finally, Tyler's false confidence collapsed. You can't do this, Amelia, he pleaded, his voice breaking. We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out like this. You threw me out the moment you made that call, I said, my tone hardening. You told me you wanted a divorce and actually laughed about me having to find a new place to live. That wasn't just betrayal. It was an attempt to completely destroy me. So don't pretend like you're the one being wronged here. Nicole took another step back, her gaze bouncing between the two of us. This is absolutely insane, she muttered, clutching her purse tighter. You didn't tell me any of this, Tyler. You told me it was all taken care of. He turned to her, desperation etched into his features. Nicole, I can fix this. I just need. She cut him off, raising her hand. No, just stop. I am not getting pulled into your disaster. Without waiting for another word, she spun around and walked out, leaving Tyler behind, stunned into silence. I couldn't help the faint smile that tugged at my lips as the door clicked shut behind her. "Looks like you're alone now," I said, turning back to him. "Let's discuss what happens next." He collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "Amelia, please. I messed up. I get that. But this isn't necessary." "You're right," I replied, pulling a folder from the kitchen counter and placing it on the coffee table in front of him. "It's not necessary, but I'm doing it anyway. These are the divorce papers. My attorney already prepared them, and I strongly suggest you sign them as soon as possible. The quicker you do, the sooner we can both move on." Tyler stared down at the folder, his complexion drained of all color. "Do you really hate me that much?" "Hate you?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Tyler. I don't hate you. I pity you. You had everything, a partner who cared about you, a home we built together, and you gave it all up because your pride wouldn't let you see what mattered." I stood, my heart racing, but my decision solid. "I want you out by tonight. Take your things. Figure out where you're going. This is your last chance. I won't offer another." He opened his mouth to object, but then stopped, shoulders sagging in resignation. "Fine," he mumbled. "I'll go." "Good," I said, heading toward the door. "And don't even think of trying anything. Chloe's overseeing everything now, and if you step out of line again, I'll let the courts handle it." As I pulled the door open, Tyler slowly rose, retrieving his coat. He didn't meet my eyes as he walked out, his footsteps heavy with defeat. A flicker of sadness crossed my chest. It wasn't grief for him I felt, but for the life I once imagined we could have shared, if only he had been the person I believed he was. That thought flickered briefly before it faded, replaced by a wave of relief. I shut the door behind him and turned the lock using the new key I had made. This place was mine now, and no one, not even Tyler, would ever take it from me again. Once he was gone, the apartment fell into an almost overwhelming silence. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually breathe. The air wasn't heavy anymore, not with his presence, not with the weight of his ego, and certainly not with the lies he'd filled our space with. It was finally just me, the home I had rebuilt, and a powerful realization: I had won. Not just against Tyler, but against every fear and insecurity that had once kept me silent. Standing in the middle of the living room, I looked around at the empty spots where his things used to be. His enormous gaming chair was gone. The sports jerseys that had once taken over the walls were no longer there. Even that flashy coffee table he'd insisted on keeping had disappeared. What remained was a space that felt cleaner, brighter, and, more than anything, truly mine. Later that evening, Lauren showed up with takeout in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. She dropped onto the couch with a dramatic exhale and asked, "So, is he actually gone for good?" I poured us each a glass of wine before answering. "Yes." He left without a fight. I gave him until the end of the day to collect his stuff, and he didn't argue. Raising her glass, she smiled. "To new beginnings and the victories we've earned." We clinked glasses, and I felt the emotional weight of the past several days finally begin to ease. "To never letting anyone walk all over me again," I added. In the days that followed, I started reclaiming every inch of my apartment. I rearranged the furniture to better suit my preferences, placed my favorite pieces of art in the living room, and surrounded myself with things that brought me comfort and joy. It wasn't just redecorating, it was a process of reshaping the space into a true reflection of who I was, rather than who Tyler had tried to mold me into. Chloe called not long after with updates about the legal matters. Her voice carried a reassuring strength that made me feel unstoppable. "The fraud charges have been dropped since the buyer isn't pursuing them," she explained. "As for the divorce, everything is progressing smoothly. Once Tyler signs the papers, it'll be official. You'll finally be free." That word, free, made my heart clench. This wasn't only about legal status. It was about letting go of all the emotional baggage I'd carried for years, the resentment, the second-guessing, and the sense of being stuck in a relationship that didn't appreciate me. Now, all of that was beginning to fall away. Tyler reached out a few times, but his messages were scattered and pitiful. Some carried lukewarm apologies, while others tried to make me feel guilty for walking away. I made a mistake. Can we at least talk? One message read. Another was more intense. You're going to destroy me, Amelia. Is that what you really want? I didn't respond. I wasn't going to waste any more emotional energy trying to salvage something that had long been irreparable. He had made his decisions, and now he was facing the consequences. By the week's end, the apartment had been completely transformed. It felt welcoming, peaceful, and completely mine. Sitting on the couch with a warm cup of tea, the city lights sparkling just beyond the window, I reflected on everything that had transpired. Tyler's betrayal had been painful, but it had also opened my eyes. I had spent too much time believing I wasn't worthy of better, settling for fragments of affection and respect. But not anymore. I had taken back my home, and with it, my life. For weeks later, everything had shifted. My daily life looked nothing like it did before. The apartment wasn't different because of dramatic changes. It had changed because of how it felt. The space now echoed my essence, my style, and the independence I had fought to reclaim. Tyler's influence was gone, and with it, the emotional weight he had left behind. The divorce process continued without any real complications. Chloe managed every detail with care and precision, ensuring there was no room for Tyler to stir up more trouble. When he finally signed the paperwork, he did so quietly. Maybe he realized he had lost any hold he once had over me. There was no confrontation, no last-minute appeal for reconciliation, just a clean, final break that was both somber and deeply rewarding. While sorting through a drawer of old documents one afternoon, I stumbled upon a photo from the early days of our relationship. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, full of excitement for the future. I paused, allowing the memories to surface. There had been moments that felt genuine, times when I truly believed we were building something meaningful. But those memories were now buried beneath years of deception, indifference, and pain. I placed the photo in an envelope and tucked it away. I wasn't ready to throw it out, but I also knew it no longer belonged on display. It was a piece of my past, a chapter one had closed, and it no longer defined who I was. To celebrate the finalized divorce, Lauren and I went out for dinner and drinks at a stylish rooftop bar downtown. As the sun dipped below the skyline, she lifted her cocktail with a bright grin. "You're absolutely glowing," she said with a wink. "Single life looks good on you." Laughter bubbled up from within me, bringing a sense of comfort I hadn't experienced in many years. "It's not about being single," I said with a smile. "It's about finally feeling free." For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't living by someone else's expectations. We raised our glasses in celebration, and as the evening unfolded, a deep sense of pride took root inside me. I had weathered one of the most challenging periods of my life and emerged not only intact but stronger. No longer was I just getting by, I was genuinely thriving. Returning to my apartment, I found myself looking ahead. That space had transformed from a place of escape into a representation of everything I had reclaimed. Still, I understood it wasn't my permanent home. One day, I would find a new place, one untouched by the memories of my past with Tyler. But until that day came, I was committed to fully living in this moment, in the space I had worked so hard to protect. That night, as I curled up on the couch, a wave of serenity settled over me. My thoughts wandered back to the phone call where Tyler laughed, so sure that he had come out on top. The memory made me smile. His overconfidence had ultimately led to his defeat, while my quiet resilience had become my greatest strength. This wasn't simply the end of a relationship, it marked the start of something entirely new. A chapter where I held the pen, where I chose joy for myself, and after such a long journey, I finally felt what it meant to be free.